Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless. Okay. Thinking and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin *****, the eternal girl. Some women never truly grow up. They move through life as if suspended in a dream, enchanting those around them with their lightness and spontaneity, yet carrying within themselves a hidden fragility. Outwardly, they are radiant, charming, magnetic, full of sparkle, but their inner world tells a different story. Beneath the glow lies a quiet fear, a resistance to time, a refusal to step into the responsibilities that maturity demands. Perhaps you have met such a woman. Perhaps you have even glimpsed her in the mirror of your own experience. She is the woman who seems to live as though life were nothing more than a rehearsal for a grand play that never arrives. Her days are filled with movement, new friendships, sudden romances, exciting projects, but none of these ever fully ripen. Each spark fades before it can become a flame. Each plan dissolves before it becomes reality. Her relationships are intense but brief, glowing with passion in the beginning and collapsing just as quickly once the first shadows appear. Her dreams are grand, inspiring, almost dazzling in their promise, but they are rarely carried through to completion. The pattern is always the same: beginnings without continuity, excitement without depth, potential without fulfillment. At the heart of this pattern lies an archetype what Carl Jung named the pure Eterna, the eternal youth. For men, it appears as the boy who refuses to become a man. For women, Jung's disciple Marie-Louise von Franz described the parallel: the Puela Eterna, the eternal girl. Von Franz dissected this pattern with almost brutal precision. The eternal girl, she explained, lives in a state of psychological suspension. She resists time, clings to fantasy, and avoids the irreversible choices that come with true adulthood. On the surface, she seems light and free, but that lightness hides a terror. The terror of surrender, the terror of responsibility, the terror of commitment. Growing up hurts. To mature is to face the emptiness within, to make choices that cut away other possibilities, to let go of childhood fantasies that once brought safety. The eternal girl resists all this. She would rather float. She would rather keep every door open than risk the pain of closing even one. She would rather live in a world of ideals than face the challenges of intimacy, routine, or permanence. And so, she dreams of perfect love, but flees from real intimacy. She longs for freedom, but resists autonomy, because autonomy means responsibility. She lives on promises both to herself and to others, but recoils when the weight of realization comes due. The most tragic part is that this woman is often admired. Others look at her and see beauty, creativity, charm. They see her sparkle, her spontaneity, her almost magical ability to light up a room. but they do not see the quiet emptiness that gnaws at her once the applause fades. They do not see the cycles repeating, the relationships failing, the projects abandoned. She herself often does not understand why she feels so restless, so lost, so fragilist, especially when the outside world insists she is radiant. She wonders why her life feels like an endless string of beginnings with no endings, why she repeats the same mistakes despite her intelligence, why she feels an unshakable emptiness even when surrounded by admiration. Jungian psychology tells us that such a woman refuses the integration of her inner masculine animus, which would give her structure, focus, and rootedness. Without it, she soars but never lands. She enchants but does not endure. And it is precisely in this refusal to mature, to integrate, that she falls into the archetype's trap. The eternal girl does not simply represent immaturity. She represents a psychological prison. She is the maiden who never becomes the queen. She lives on the surface of life, but never in its depths. And yet, this story does not end here. For within every woman trapped in this archetype lies the potential for transformation, the possibility of stepping beyond charm into wholeness. But before that transformation can begin, she must first recognize the shadow that holds her captive. This is the paradox of the eternal girl. She is adored for her brilliance, but suffers for her emptiness. She fears growing up because she thinks it means losing her magic. But in truth, maturity does not destroy her light, it anchors it. And until she discovers this, she remains caught in a cycle of enchantment and disappointment, waiting endlessly for a life she has not yet chosen to live. The archetype's mask, the Puela Eterna, is not simply a personality quirk. She is not a passing phase, nor a charming eccentricity. She is an archetype, what Carl Jung described as a timeless, collective psychic image that shapes our inner lives. Archetypes do not belong to one individual. They are universal patterns that live in the unconscious, emerging through myths, dreams, and personal struggles. The eternal girl is one such figure, a powerful force that quietly governs the lives of many women. On the surface, the Puela seems almost magical. She is radiant, spontaneous, full of life. People admire her energy, her creativity, her ability to dream beyond the ordinary. She appears free, untouched by the heaviness of responsibility or the boredom of routine. In a culture that glorifies youth, she shines even brighter, embodying everything society tells women they should be: desirable, light, eternally young. But this is only the mask. Behind the sparkle, behind the dreamlike aura, there lies something else, a void, a hollow space that no applause, no romance, no new adventure can truly fill. For while she may dazzle others with her charm, she cannot sustain it. Her brilliance burns fast and fades quickly, leaving her in cycles of restlessness, disillusionment, and escape. The Puela thrives on what is light and abstract, but she recoils from what is heavy and real. She loves passion, as long as it is platonic, untouched by the struggles of intimacy. She adores projects as long as they remain ideas, unburdened by deadlines or responsibility. She dreams endlessly as long as she never has to anchor those dreams in the soil of reality. The moment life demands consistency, commitment, or discipline, her enchantment collapses. Marie-Louise von Franz, Jung's closest collaborator, described this pattern with painful precision. See, she saw how the eternal girl becomes trapped in the almost. She almost loves, almost commits, almost builds, almost surrenders. Her life becomes a series of beginnings that never reach fulfillment.
Freedom.
For her lies not in depth, but in escape. She avoids the limits of life, the boredom, the repetition, the work required to sustain anything real. But where does this resistance come from? Why does the eternal girl resist maturity so fiercely? Part of the answer lies in culture. We live in a society that worships youth and diminishes maturity. Women are told, subtly and directly, that their worth lies in being admired, not in being profound. They are taught that femininity is lightness, not authority, beauty, not depth. To grow older is framed not as a natural process of deepening, but as a loss, a decline, a fading away. It is no wonder, then, that many cling to the illusion of eternal youth. Yet the roots often run deeper still. For many women, the Puela emerges as a psychic defense against unresolved trauma. A wound buried in childhood may freeze part of the psyche in place, creating an unconscious resistance to maturity. The charming persona, with all its lightness and spontaneity, forms as a mask a way to survive, to distract from the pain beneath. But over time, the mask becomes a prison. What once protected now confines. Jung, writing on the feminine archetypes, warned that when a woman refuses to engage with her unconscious, she risks being possessed by it. In the case of the eternal girl, this possession takes the form of fragility, inconsistency, and dependence. The woman does not live her life, she is lived by the archetype. She repeats patterns without knowing why, circles endlessly without seeing the center, and wonders why she feels empty even when admired. And so the mask continues. Outwardly, she sparkles. Inwardly, she drifts. She resists the confrontation that could free her because it requires letting go of the fantasy. It requires facing the truth that charm alone cannot sustain a life, that enchantment cannot replace depth, that freedom is not the absence of ties but the courage to commit. This is the secret of the archetype's mask. It hides weakness under the guise of freedom, fragility under the guise of spontaneity, emptiness under the guise of brilliance. To those who admire her, the eternal girl seems to be everything. To herself, in moments of silence, she fears she is nothing. And unless she learns to pierce through her own mask, she will remain suspended forever, waiting, forever escaping, forever living in a life of almosts. The maiden and the queen, within every woman, two powerful archetypes live in tension. The maiden and the great mother. These are not roles a woman consciously chooses, but deep psychic forces that shape her desires, her fears, and the way she meets the world. Understanding the difference between these two archetypes sands the painful transition from one to the other, is essential to breaking free from the trap of the eternal girl. The maiden is the image of youth, freshness, and possibility. She is radiant, hopeful, open to life. In her, there is enchantment, inspiration, and the spark of new beginnings. She embodies innocence and charm, purity and seduction, all at once. In youth, this archetype is vital. It pushes a woman to explore, to dream, to cross boundaries, to discover her place in the world. Without the maiden, there would be no curiosity, no openness, no thirst for experience. But the maiden is only one stage of the feminine journey. When she lingers too long, refusing to give way to other archetypes, she becomes an obstacle rather than a guide. A woman dominated by the maiden image may find herself stuck in an endless loop of beginnings without conclusions, of potentials that never solidify, of almosts that never become realities. She remains suspended in a world of possibilities, never grounding herself in choices, commitments, or responsibility. Marie-Louise von Franz spoke of this with striking clarity. She insisted that the maiden must symbolically die in order for a woman to become whole. This does not mean the literal death of youth, charm, or vitality, but the death of the childish ego that clings to fantasy and refuses reality. As long as the maiden refuses this symbolic death, the woman remains incomplete, forever waiting to be saved, forever deferring her power, forever living as potential, but never as realization. On the other side of this symbolic death lies another archetype, the Great Mother. She is not simply the nurturing caretaker so often reduced to domestic stereotypes. She is sovereign, commanding, and whole. She embodies maturity, depth, and authority. She knows when to nurture and when to withhold, when to give and when to protect. Unlike the maiden who waits to be chosen, the Great Mother chooses. Unlike the maiden who craves admiration, the Great Mother commands respect. The Great Mother does not float through life. She roots herself. She does not enchant by promises. She sustains by presence. She does not cling to the dream of idealized love. She builds and transforms real relationships. She does not live on beginnings. She carries things through to their end. Where the maiden is dependent, the Great Mother is autonomous. Where the maiden is fragile, the Great Mother is grounded, and yet few women reach this stage easily. The path requires sacrifice. Maiden, with her beauty and charm, resists her own symbolic death. She clings to the mirror, to the admiration of others, to the illusion that time can be held still. She resists maturity because she confuses it with loss, not realizing that it is the only path to wholeness. Jung emphasized that individuation, the process of becoming a complete self, requires a woman to integrate what lies hidden within her, not only the enchanting, youthful image she shows the world, but also her creative, destructive, and regenerative powers. Without this integration, she remains fragmented, forever half a self. The tragedy of the eternal maiden is that she believes her brilliance will fade if she grows up. But the truth is the opposite. Her brilliance becomes whole only when it deepens into wisdom, when it anchors itself in commitment, when it matures into sovereignty. The archetype of the Great Mother is not about abandoning beauty or lightness. It is about embodying depth and authority. It is about moving from being admired to being respected, from being chosen to choosing, from waiting for permission to living with presence. The eternal girl fears this passage, yet it is the only passage that leads to freedom. For without the death of the maiden, the queen within cannot be born. The shadow of Puela? The Puela Eterna enchants. She has a sparkle in her eyes, a vitality that draws others in, a lightness that seems almost otherworldly. People admire her spontaneity, her impulsive creativity, her ability to make even the mundane feel alive. And yet, what appears as freedom and brilliance is often a disguise, a mask that hides a painful shadow. That shadow is sabotage. In love, the Puela dreams of a perfect romance, a connection so intense and magical that it feels lifted straight from myth. She longs for the sublime, for the partner who will rescue her from uncertainty and give her existence shape. But the moment intimacy begins to reveal the humanness of the other, their flaws, their demands, their ordinary niche recoils. Suddenly, she feels disappointed, disillusioned, betrayed. She tells herself the magic is gone, but in truth, the magic was never there. It was projection, an idealized image she cast upon the other. When reality intrudes, she flees. Thus, the cycle begins again. Enchantment, disillusion, escape. In her career, the pattern repeats itself. The Puela is brilliant at beginnings. She throws herself into new projects with passion, ideas sparking, energy overflowing. But as soon as the work requires discipline, consistency, or sacrifice, her enthusiasm falters. She feels suffocated by routine, stifled by responsibility. She tells herself she has not yet found her true calling. And so she abandons the project, searching again for the next great idea. To others, this may look like a pursuit of authenticity, but often it is nothing more than an escape from the pain that every real path requires. Marie-Louise von Franz observed this with searing clarity. The woman dominated by the Puela archetype is always searching for a savior, someone or something to give her meaning. But because no external figure can fill the void within, she oscillates between idealization and rejection, soaring in dreams and crashing in reality. She wants the ecstasy of encounter, but not the labor of relationship. She craves passion, but not the weight of permanence. This avoidance shows itself most starkly in her refusal to choose. Choices terrify her, for to choose one thing is to give up another. Every decision means closing doors, relinquishing possibilities, letting go of parts of herself. And so she avoids commitment, living instead in the land of maybe. Maybe she will pursue this path. Maybe she will love this person. Maybe she will stay. Maybe she will change again. This endless maybe keeps her in suspension forever. In motion, yet going nowhere. Behind this avoidance lies something deeper, a psychic wound she cannot name. The Puela masks her hidden pain with endless movement, with romances, with grand plans. But beneath the glitter lies a silent fear. The fear of emptiness, of meaninglessness, of being unloved and unsupported. Her flight from responsibility is not simply immaturity. It is a defense against a pain she does not know how to face. Over time, however, this defense corrodes. The enchantment that once captivated others becomes fragile. What was once light-hearted spontaneity begins to look like instability. Her resistance to choosing and committing leaves her adrift, untethered, vulnerable. People may still admire her brilliance, but they also begin to sense the hollowness beneath it. Jung warned that when a woman's animus, her inner masculine principle of structure and direction, remains undeveloped, it manifests as inflated speech without substance, grand ideas without results. The Puela embodies this. She speaks often of her uniqueness, her vision, her freedom. Puela roots these qualities in anything lasting. The shadow of the Puela is that she seems to embody freedom, while in truth she is enslaved to her fear of growing up, to her refusal to face pain, to her dependence on fantasy. What she calls freedom is often avoidance. What she calls brilliance is often fragility. What she calls passion is often projection. And the tragedy is that she does not see it. To her, the cycle feels inevitable. She convinces herself she is searching for authenticity, for something truer, purer. But in reality, she is simply running from responsibility, from reality, from herself. The shadow of the Puela is this. She does not want to stay. She does not want to choose. She does not want to grow. And until she confronts this truth, her life remains a circle, bright, sparkling, full of beginnings, but empty at its center. Crossing the mirror, to break free from the Puela Eterna, is no small task. It is not as simple as changing habits, starting a new project, or making resolutions. It is a confrontation with the deepest fears of the psyche. The eternal girl is not a mask one can casually remove. She is an archetype rooted in the unconscious, a pattern that has shaped a woman's entire identity. To step beyond her means crossing the mirror, leaving behind fantasy and entering the raw terrain of reality. This crossing is painful. It feels like death, because in many ways it is. The maiden must die so the queen may be born. What dies is not beauty, nor vitality, nor joy, but the childish ego that clings to illusions of eternal youth. What is shed is the fantasy of being saved, of remaining light and untethered, of never making choices. And what is gained is something deeper: authenticity, wholeness, and sovereignty. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming who we truly are. beyond the masks we wear and the archetypes that unconsciously live us. For the woman trapped in the Puela, individuation begins the moment she recognizes the cycle. She sees the repeated patterns, the fleeting relationships, the abandoned dreams, the restless movement, the emptiness that follows her. She realizes that the freedom she has been chasing is not freedom at all, but avoidance. At first, this recognition feels unbearable. The Puela resists with all her charm, whispering that to grow up is to lose magic, to lose beauty, to lose love. But this is the great illusion. Growing up is not the end of freedom, it is the beginning of it. For the first time, freedom becomes rooted, not in escape, but in presence. It is the freedom to choose and remain, to build and sustain, to love. Not just in fantasy, but in reality. To cross the mirror means confronting time itself. The Puela is terrified of aging because she ties her worth to youth, beauty, and desirability. But aging is not decay. It is transformation. Nice. The lines that time carves are not the end of enchantment, but the beginning of depth. Maturity brings a kind of beauty that is no longer fragile because it is grounded in truth. Marie-Louise von Franz reminded that healing begins when the eternal youth, whether pure or Puela, commits to something greater than themselves. This is the decisive step, commitment. Not the fleeting passion of beginnings, but the endurance of choosing one path, one love, one creation, and standing firm. Commitment anchors the soul. It transforms scattered energy into rooted presence. But this requires courage. It means closing doors, letting go of possibilities, surrendering fantasies. It means accepting that life is not infinite rehearsal, but lived reality, and that every choice shapes destiny. The Puela resists because she does not want to give up the dream. But in refusing, she remains trapped in circles of almost never. Tasting the fulfillment she secretly longs for, the crossing of the mirror is, above all, an act of responsibility. It is saying, I am no longer waiting for someone to save me. I will carry myself. It is the end of victimhood and the beginning of authorship. The woman who crosses the mirror stops being an object of desire and becomes the subject of her own life. And in this paradox lies the truth. When she stops chasing idealized love, she finally discovers real love. When she stops trying to be admired, she begins to be respected. When she stops performing enchantment, she discovers presence. She becomes whole. The eternal girl waits for a savior. The queen saves herself. And in that moment, she does not lose. Her light, she deepens it. She does not abandon her charm, she roots it in truth. She becomes not just admired, but complete. This is the invitation of crossing the mirror, to let the maiden rest, and to awaken the sovereign within.